The low profile flour. Now, as you know, SHS have two products. They have low profile flour and they also have Juvela. And if your patients have not tried both of those products, please encourage them to try both of those products, because some people just have a better result with one product than the other. So if they're not having success maybe with one product, then try and encourage them to look up the other one and see if they can get that up to speed. So into your bowl, you're going to put your whole packet of flour. Quite easy so far. You're not going to be stressing too much about that, I don't think. And then you're going to put in your pre-prepared yeast. So as you know, that comes in the packet. Now, at this point, this is often actually where people go wrong. They just dump the yeast in there and they don't mix it through. So you must actually mix the yeast through the flour. Okay, mix that through really thoroughly, so that you know that it is dispersed throughout the flour. People who are using bread makers sometimes don't do that little activity, and they get a clump of yeast and they get a lot of yeast activity in one part of the bread maker. So it's important to actually distribute the yeast. Also, you can add salt at this point. I'm not going to add salt today, but you can add salt. Again, if they are using a bread maker and they have had any incidents of the bread bubbling out of the top of the bread maker, people are nodding. They need salt. Salt inhibits the growth of yeast. Okay, so it's important, if you're doing it in a bread maker, if dietary requirements allow, then to add the salt. It will suppress the growth of the yeast, and that should not happen. If they are obviously, if they're just putting in a pinch, then they need to put in half a teaspoon or a teaspoon. So that might actually just solve that problem. You've got 400 mils of water, okay? Now, I've done some experiments, and Angela will back me up on this. We did some experiments last year about the tolerance of this flour to water. It will take up to 425 mils of water, and you will still get a very, very good loaf. So it's not so critical to be really accurate with the water. In actual fact, I think, 410 is good. Okay, 410, 420 is usually quite good. But it does say 400 on the packet. One of the things, if your patients are making a very heavy bread and they've complained about that, they may be just looking like that to measure their water. They need to get down and check that it is 400. Measuring liquid is difficult, and when we did our last dietitian's cookery day in Scotland, he weighed the water, which I was so impressed with. And I thought, whoa. But we won't weigh the water today. Okay, we won't weigh the water today, but around 400. Okay, around 400. So you can either put the oil, which has been measured for you, out on top, like that, so it's just one addition, or you can add them together. I always think it's a bit easier to put them in together. So in it goes, all in, and straight away, without being distracted, because if you leave it, it will stick together. Without being distracted. Sorry, I didn't mean that you're not allowed to talk to each other. But if you leave it, it will form little lumps. So you need to straight away get in there and bring it together. Definitely. Now, one of the things that I would say is about halfway through, scrape this off. Now, you really do need to have a silicone spatula. If you are doing any work with low protein mix, please get a silicone spatula, because in Scotland we would call this mixture clarty. Yes, clarty. It sticks to everything. But with the silicone, it will clean around the bowl. Okay, the silicone spatulas are brilliant for taking everything out. So check that you have all the mixture off the side of the bowl. If you leave bits of flour up there, then that's flour that is not in the mixture and not performing, the right, making the correct proportions inside the mixture. So that's very, very important. And I just want to talk a little bit about the tins. Right, we're going to provide you with a selection of tins. So we'll get some different shapes. Preparing your tin. Patients need a good tin. You know the little cheap aluminium, sort of very silvery ones? They're not so good. You need a slightly better. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but go up one grade from the really cheap ones. This does improve the browning of the bottom of the bread. If this is good metal, it gets hot, it touches the bread, and it helps to brown the outside of the bread. If it's a poor metal, you get a poor contact and you don't get so much browning. Okay, so you will get a much better result by just paying a little bit more for your tin. You're going to oil your tin now with the lighter oil. I hope I've got the right oil there. Oh, I think this is the lighter oil. So when you oil and grease your tin, whichever shape, it's the paler oil that we're going to use for greasing.
Is that just an ordinary vegetable oil?
That's just a, what have we got?
That's sunflower.
That's sunflower.
Yes.
You can grease with lard, margarine. What you do need to be careful is that there's not too much in the bottom, because then that will fry the bottom of the loaf. Not so good.